Hey everyone, today is part 3 of a 4-part series of me going over past deals that I've done in real estate. My name is Ariel Herrera with the AnalyticsAriel channel, where we bridge the gap between real estate and technology. Now, if you enjoy data, analytics, and practical real estate advice, then please subscribe to this channel. As well, if you want to hear more deal deep dives, then please let me know by adding comments below, as well as liking this content. All right, let's get started. Property number 3 I've nicknamed Boyer Boulevard. And it's a really interesting story in how it got its name. But one of the really great things of this property is that it was my move into Tampa, Florida. So I'm going to be covering the setup, the finances of how I was able to purchase this property, target, talking about the market and how I chose my area, action, actually putting an offer down, going to closing, and then lastly, reflection. Now, if you've seen the 2 previous deals, my first 2, my why slightly changes for this deal. And one of the main reasons is due to COVID-19 that occurs in March of 2020. As of this time, everyone's working from home, so instead of commuting into New York City 3 times a week, I am living in the lap of luxury in my PJs, sitting inside my house in my nice desk. Working from home was literally the best thing that's ever happened for me since I work in technology. I barely talk to anyone all day besides maybe a couple of meetings. So this was never a need for me to go into an office, and great because I was able to spend a lot more time with my cat. Being a young professional in technology, I realized, hey, I can't be the only one who's really excited about not having to go to an office. I bet you a lot of people are thinking the same thing as well. How do I actually transition in my lifestyle where I can continue to work from home post-pandemic? God knows how long it's going to be, but I never have to go into an office again. So that's my new why, because I want to be able to take that new time that I've gotten back in my life to do things like this. AnalyticsAriel, as well being able to spend more time with family. And of course, I want to make more cash money. So by leaving New Jersey, I get to potentially go into a state where everything's less cost. Instead of going for a drink in Jersey City for $14, I want to be able to go to a nice restaurant or bar and pay less than $10 for a drink. That should be possible. And I don't want to pay 10% income tax. So this is my why as of this moment. And my finances, I need to have a good credit score, low debt to income ratio, and a savings for down payment, which I have all these things at that point because I have been house hacking. I know that if I were to leave to go to another state, I could possibly make less money upon my move. So I'm not willing to leave my company because I know it's going to be a high chance. So I actually decide to go to my manager in the end of April. So quarantine has only happened for about 6 weeks now, and I want to get ahead of the trend. I'm thinking everyone's going to ask the same thing at some point. Let me be ahead of it before they make any rules in the company that may hinder me in the future. So because I'm a hardworking employee and I got ahead of the trend, I got the approval to move to Tampa, Florida from New Jersey and keep the same salary, which means I was essentially going to get a 10% increase as well, since I'm not paying the income taxes. Now, my strategy here is, again, live then rent. Going into a brand new city is definitely scary, and I thought about multiple times, why don't I just rent and get accustomed to the area? Knowing me, I'm like, I'm not going to throw $20K down the drain. I might as well just get a property and rent it out afterwards, since I already have that cash saved from house hacking. So my strategy again is live in the property for a year, get accustomed to Tampa, and then after a year, rent it out and actually go move into a neighborhood that I really want to be a part of. My buy box here is single family home, 3 bed, 2 bath. So now I'm expanding because we're both working from home, my boyfriend and I. So we want to have our own rooms in order to work. 1,500 square feet, which is kind of standard for this size of a house with 3 beds, 2 baths. In Florida, so many new builds are occurring. So I want to be able to get something that's similar to a new build, 2015 and up. No more 1900s house. So in this case, it's going to be pretty much turnkey. I want to have a backyard since it's so sunny in Florida. and have parking, low HOA. Now that's big because I've seen a lot of communities with high HOAs. You're looking at a mortgage that's pretty low, but then all of a sudden it's $300 every month just to pay an HOA to mow a little bit of the lawn and do some other small tasks, which I don't want. And of course, washer, dryer, in unit. So I set all this in my criteria on Zillow. And then for affordability, I'm only looking to put 5% down. I want to keep my mortgage around the same that I have it in New Jersey. Therefore, I'm looking at a property between $250,000 to $300,000. So I worked my way backwards to find out what the price range should be. And now that I've lived on my own in a property, I have a little bit more of a sense of what I'm looking for. South Amboy is a terrific town. However, there's not a large supermarket there. You do have to drive 10 minutes to one. There's no specialty gyms, so I was stuck at YMCA, which is a great gym, but I like to do more HIIT-related classes. I want to be 25 minutes from downtown, so Florida is huge. I don't want to be put in the middle of the sticks. Also want to be 1.25 hours from Orlando, since I have family that lives around there. Close to beach. Why would you move to Florida without the beach? Good schools, mostly not for me, but for the idea of renting it out in the future. I also don't want an evacuation zone, which is one of the biggest fears people have of moving to Florida. And I want long-term appreciation. Now, the challenge here of figuring out what city I wanted to invest in and live in was way different than doing it in New Jersey. New Jersey is super small, so there's only so many counties that I would be looking at, whereas Florida is huge. It's massive. So I decided that I wanted to live in a city. I wanted to have family within 50 minutes. So luckily I have family in the Tampa area, as well as in Orlando area and in the Miami area. So due to this, I hone in on these 3 cities. I look at articles on fastest growing cities. I love data, I love analytics, so I'm looking at information daily for hours. So it's a lot of heavy research. I research affordability since, again, I want to be able to get a drink at a nice restaurant and not spend $18 or something crazy, which happens a lot of the case in New Jersey. Then I research what's best for young professionals. So when I actually research this, a lot of what's on the right-hand side, like Boca Raton, Fort Lauderdale, and also the Southwest, like Naples, Fort Myers, a lot of those got X'd out just because the population is a lot older, and that's not really what I'm looking for, which makes Tampa and Orlando, as well as more inland in Miami, really preferable because they have a lot of big colleges and people stay after going to the colleges there, so they do have a lot of nice young environments. So I decided I want to go with Tampa because of that criteria that I just showed you ended up being the most affordable, up-and-coming city. As well, it has the best beaches by far. Now, Tampa is also pretty big. The Tampa metropolitan area is St. Pete, Clearwater, and Tampa. So how do I decide where to actually invest and to live in? Well, going back to my buy box, some of my criteria that I had was being close to Orlando, which automatically X's out Clearwater and St. Pete because you have to go over a bridge, and there are also possibly evacuation zones. Then looking at 75 right here, which is a major highway, if you're on the right hand of 75, you don't have to evacuate. So I wanted to make sure I was on the right hand of 75. Then I wanted to still be close to the city, but in a newer house. So that kind of brought me down. So Brandon's a little bit older of a town, really beautiful, but not as many new builds as Riverview. So Riverview really sparked my interest. Riverview's massive. You could drive like 20 minutes south and you're still in Riverview. So I made sure that I'm only looking at North Riverview, as that's going to hit all my requirements of still being close to the city, close to Orlando, and less than an hour from the beach. Next, I've graduated where I'm not fumbling with numbers as much. I'm actually using a spreadsheet. So I have a single family home spreadsheet that I've used from J. Scott. And I've analyzed, okay, if I were to get a property in Tampa and I rent it out in a year, what would my income look like? So I separate this out by rent and pets. My expenses will now be HOA fees, possibly property management. I like to incorporate that in, even if I'm not going to use a property manager, just to make sure the cash flow would be there. And I also incorporated sewage this time, which I didn't last time, as an expense. And my cash flow that I desire is $300 at least a month. So I know that in order for me to get a property that's $250 to $300K in total, my monthly payment will be between 1.7 and 1.9 total, and the units must rent out to 2,000 to 2.2 in order for me to cash flow positively. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't select certain parts of Riverview. So you can get some cheaper houses as you go down, but you're getting farther from the city, and you're not going to get as many tenants that are military as well. So you're lessening your pool, and you usually have to have lower rents as you go down. So those actually weren't viable for me, which is why I had to focus on the north part of Riverview. Then for my team, I didn't ask for a referral for an agent. I actually just used the Zillow agent that was listed, and he ended up being awesome, James. In Florida, just like Detroit, you don't need a lawyer in order to close a deal, which makes things so much easier. Then for mortgage, insurance, I also went with who my agent suggested. Then for the inspector, don't need an inspector when the house is practically brand new, which is awesome. Then property manager, I actually didn't use a property manager here. I Yelped a couple just to see if there were any, but I didn't do it. And then handyman, I was thinking if I have a property manager, I would have the handyman through them. But I actually used TaskRabbit a lot, and as well as Thumbtack while being in the property, and those are my preferred ways to go. Then for my accountability partner was, of course, Mama Herrera, who was very, very sad that I was leaving. However, she helped me make some good decisions on what properties we should be looking at. And then the offer is accepted. We see 3 houses. With those houses, we made an offer on a single one. It was actually on the market for 3 months. It was listed at $280. It went down a little bit more. Then we came down in price to $271. And let me tell you, by us just getting ahead of this trend, this property within one single year goes for like $350. So just by being ahead of the whole wave of people moving down south, we were able to close this property at a really low price without any competition, which is awesome. So I put 5% down, 1% escrow, 30 days to close, which was pretty aggressive, and I kept all contingencies. But when it came to the contingency of an inspection, I actually didn't do one. This house ended up being a 2018 house that was bought by a military family. His family actually didn't even live in it. They were living in Texas, and he was only here for one single year and then looked to go with his family in Texas. So there was barely any wear and tear. The only thing that I had to do was check out the pool when I went to go see it. Now, of course, it is sentimental having to leave not just a city or a town, but going across the country to another state. So did get to have some farewell events with some friends and then move on to the journey of moving out. So getting the U-Haul was not easy. At this period, a lot of people had decided due to COVID, they want to move, they want to live in the South, and they want to have less taxes since they're working from home with the same job. So everyone with the same idea, it was very hard to get a U-Haul. Mama Herrera on the left was helping me gauge the size of the U-Haul. The one on the left we didn't go with because it was too small to fit our couches. Went with one similar to the right with her car attached to the back. And we had to pick up the U-Haul. They called us the day before. We had to pick it up 2.5 hours south past Atlantic City. So we had to drive all the way down, get the U-Haul, bring it all the way back up to Monmouth County, load up the U-Haul, and then drive back down. So we were very lucky that we were able to get a U-Haul. I'm thankful for it, but it was not an easy process. And going to this next pic, this is us in the U-Haul. I know I looked completely disheveled. I felt it. It took 17 hours to get down. We did make a stop in a really ratchet area, which I would never do again. But the bright side was that we had our cat right in between us, and he slept most of the way. Now, of course, all of my deals have to have some closing story that doesn't go as simple as I would like. The case here was that we set everything up perfectly so that when we got to Florida, we would be closing that Monday. Now, there was a missing document from the HOA, which I'll explain in a moment, of a lot of things that can go wrong with HOA. There was supposed to be some document that was received by the lender. It wasn't on time, so the closing was delayed by a full week. We had to negotiate with U-Haul in order to have an additional week. Ended up kind of working out that we picked up the U-Haul so far because I was able to use that as an inconvenience for them to give us an extra week with pretty low cost. And in the short term, because we had family in the Tampa region, we were able to stay with them. Then we actually move in, and it's awesome. We live in this brand new community, get to meet some neighbors, and we meet Boyer. He's the best neighbor of all. So Boyer is the resident gator. Actually haven't seen him in person, but some of the houses that face a really large pond, they'll actually take photos of him. And he looks super cute there and harmless, but as we know, he probably can tear us apart if need be. Hence why this property is called Boyer Boulevard. Live in this property for 1 full year, exactly to the date. Now is the time to move on and list the property for rent. I got a lot of pushback from family and friends on why would you leave such a nice neighborhood, practically a brand new property, to go somewhere else. But this is my strategy, and for me, my fastest way of accumulating properties for lowest cost. So what I did was I took photos, kept some of the old ones because they were really nice, so I used a combination, put the property on Zillow, and within 36 hours, I had 10 applicants. I showed the house in person as well as over FaceTime since it still was COVID. There were people who were from Boston and other cities up north that were looking to move down with their families, couldn't be there in person to see the properties, but were willing to rent them. It was listed on a Wednesday, and the final decision I was able to make by Friday morning. Better pool this time around than South Amboy in terms of the amount of people who actually applied and having higher credit scores. So at the end, I was able to make $500 cash flow on this property. I didn't expect it. I thought the property would rent less, but because, as I said, we got ahead of the trend, we moved into this property when it was still pretty low and not as many people were thinking about moving to the south yet. And then a year later, people are flocking to the south and they want to live in these really nice communities, feel out what it's like to live in Tampa without buying a property yet. Hence, I can put the rent a lot more than I expected. But of course, there's always trouble down the road. So when I selected the tenant, everything went really smoothly, but we lived in a gated community. So one of the things that I needed to do was make sure the tenants had access in order to enter the community. They should also have the availability to put who they want to access the gates as well, such as DoorDash or whatever reoccurring services that they have. And I sent my check to the HOA way before the tenants were moving in. They were moving in August 1st. Sent this July 13th just to get their vehicle tags. What does the HOA do? They process my check and they don't give me anything. So I'm here assuming that the tenant has received things in the mail since they haven't said anything of concern. Come to find out, late August of this year, they haven't received anything. So I went back and forth with the HOA via emails for about a week. And finally, they were able to see, yes, we cashed your check, but we didn't give you anything for it. So these are just some of the things that you have to deal with an HOA. Luckily, mine is really affordable. When I started and I got the property, it was $64. I went up to $74. So it's still fairly low compared to some other HOA communities. The way I manage this property right now is Zillow Rental Manager, which I absolutely love because it's kind of like an all-in-one tool. I put the property on Zillow Rental Manager. I'm able to create the lease off of it. I'm able to get the tenant payment off of it as well. I have 2 videos on this if you want to look more in detail. And then what I learned was that HOAs are slow. Expect them to be slow. They delayed my closing. They also made it difficult for the new tenants moving in. So be aware of that. Gated communities are also not always the best because, again, if you have an HOA, there's going to be some workarounds when switching out tenants. Don't buy a house next to a big one that blocks the sun. Loved being able to move down to Tampa. We had amazing neighbors. However, they lived in a 2-story building, 2-story house, and that was the direction the sun was coming. So literally every day was gray inside the house, and I did not like that. So now the property that I live in, it's actually a corner lot where that does not happen. Then having a supermarket walking distance is totally amazing, not just from living in it on your own as your primary residence, but for a tenant to be able to say, hey, Publix is literally a 5-minute walk away is huge. That also appeals to a variety of tenants, those who have maybe teens that can still, go out on their own and grab something from Publix, and as well as those who are in the elderly community, but don't actually want to be in a 65 and up place or 55 and up place. And lastly, I believe finally, after being and searching 3 different markets, so South Amboy, Detroit, and Riverview, I believe I finally have found the market that I want to continue investing in, and not just invest and live in rent, but also invest on my own by doing seller financing and other creative strategies. So definitely more deals to come. If you like this type of content, don't forget to subscribe, and please leave any questions and comments below. Thanks.